Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The disappearing fight. What's happened to Martin Bakole and Sergey Kuzmin? They were meant to be fighting on August the 22nd on the Dillian Whyte-Alexander Povetkin pay-per-view undercard, but as Eddie Hearn sort of revealed in an interview, they're still looking for an opponent for Martin Bakole. So no further detail on that, and it begs the question, well, what happened to the Kuzmin fight? Because it was made, he was fighting, and we really haven't had any detail. And then in the next breath, he mentions Dave Allen, that he might be fighting on that card, and he might be lining something interesting up for Allen on that card. So, I mean, the whole thing was, this was a clip, almost throwaway comments to some extent, and Eddie Hearn, very brief. You can probably still find the clip floating around on social media. I had seen Unrivaled Boxing Talk. He had sort of retweeted the actual clip, so you can find it on his Twitter. I was expecting, though, because this was a day or so ago, that something would be in the media, that there'd be some comment on this, that we'd be able to hear a bit more about what is actually going on. But it's been like a ghost town. I just did a quick Google search. There is nothing to be said on this thing anywhere. And Martin Bakole himself. So there's a couple of things. I will sort of just talk about Bakole in this post and this lack of any sort of comment. But then if it is off, which seemingly it is, it's disappointing. I just want to talk about that because it was a good crossroads fight. But then you sort of have the other issue with, is Dave Allen coming in to replace Bakole? Or is it a case of he's going to be fighting another heavyweight on the card? So we'll talk about that. But Martin Bakole and his trainer Billy Nelson, very quiet on social media, not saying anything about this. And given the way that, say this, you can see here on screen, this was a live stream that Bakole did traveling in a car with Nelson. Really, they don't seem to be too perturbed or put out. Maybe Bakole is still going to be on the card. It could be a case that the Dave Allen thing is a red herring, that it's not Allen coming in to fight Bakole or replace Bakole, that he's just going to be doing something else. But, I mean, I guess either way, if Bakole is on the card, he's going to get paid. The training camp wouldn't be wasted. But that fight with Kuzmin, it was a really good fight for both. Identical records, 15 wins, 1 loss. Kuzmin, he sort of hasn't looked great in the last year or so, whereas Bakole's been doing a rebuild job. So it's a case, and they both lost to Michael Hunter as well. Bakole in 2018, Kuzmin in 2019, and Kuzmin certainly was more thoroughly beaten, I think, in terms of he took a sustained sort of boxing lesson and beating to some extent, also getting dropped in that fight, whereas Bakole, was competitive for stretches of the Hunter fight, sort of faded and found a lot of fresh air in that fight. Ultimately, he was injured late in the fight. Hunter ended up taking him out late, but I digress. But that sort of live stream images, it doesn't really seem to indicate that they're too down on their luck and that they've lucked out of a fight here. But the whole thing, if Kuzmin has pulled out, what's the reason? Why would he have pulled out? Is he injured, or is it a case of he's got corona, or who knows? But I mean, I was looking at his Instagram page, and here's the post, which is from a couple of days ago, which may have been about the time that this fight fell over. We just don't know, but it sort of is a pretty morose sort of post. He says, "I confess to you, the longer I live, the more clearly I understand that the main thing in life is to know exactly what you want and not to be confused by those who think they know better." So whether that's in relation to him not fighting Martin Bakole, I mean, it's just hard to say. It would just be pure speculation. But that's his most recent post. Haven't seen anything from him, Bakole's trainer Billy Nelson, even any further detail from Eddie Hearn about what's happened. Remembering that card is only a couple of weeks away, just under 3 at the time that this video was made. So really, it's a bit of a dent in the card if it doesn't go off, because for some, that was the fight that they were looking forward to the most on that card because of what was on the line. It was a really good crossroads fight for both. They both needed to sort of get a win over the other to sort of progress their career, because they've both sort of been stuck in sort of, walking in treacle to some extent. They can't really get any traction in the heavyweight division. Martin Bakole more so. Kuzmin fought Hunter last year. That was an opportunity. He wasn't able to grasp it. He lost that fight conclusively. Whereas Bakole's on the rebuild. He's had, 3 or 4 good wins since losing to Hunter. Not against the greatest opposition, but it's clear he's been ready for a tougher test like a Sergey Kuzmin. They both needed each other to progress to that next level, that next step in their career. And for the loser, it would have been a long way back. But clearly, it sounds like we're not getting that fight. For what reason? Unclear. But then you have Eddie Hearn talking about Dave Allen. Is he going to be on that card? Is he going to be replacing Martin Bakole? It's a question. But then I thought there's another heavyweight that was added to that card just a few weeks ago, and that was Alen Babic. He is a Dillian Whyte trained fighter. He'd been lobbying to get on that card. He found a place on that card. He was going to be, the 5th fight on the card, 5 fights total for this pay-per-view event. But it was opponent TBC, so it makes me wonder, is Dave Allen going to be added? And if the Bakole and Kuzmin fight has sort of fallen over, then maybe they need the so-called star value that Dave Allen will bring. But it certainly reminded me, the situation, if Allen comes in, of a 2018 meme, see here on screen, of Eddie Hearn hitting the Dave Allen button to add him to a pay-per-view. I think even at that point, Allen had already fought on 4 or 5 pay-per-view events, and since, I think, maybe 1 or 2 more. So he's certainly been on a number of cards, had a lot of exposure. He does have a following on social media, but clearly his brand has been tarnished more of late. That David Price fight, it really sort of exposed where his level was. And he had been training for that fight, he'd been working with Darren Barker, but he was simply just outclassed. His level was sort of shown up, maybe he's English level at best, probably sort of can't win a British title. But it is a situation where Allen does have a bit of appeal to a casual audience, so it could end up helping prop up another pay-per-view card. And if he is to face Alen Babic, well, that certainly is an interesting fight, because Alen Babic, just a few fights under the belt, not really known to a mainstream audience. That would be the biggest test of his career to date. He's only fought, a few times and against no one of real note. But I guess for Dave Allen, if he's going to be tossed in against a guy like Babic who looks to have some skill and ability, maybe he's not going to go all the way, but, it's sort of too early to tell for Babic. But he does have power, he does have some skills, and it's a good barometer potentially for where Babic is really at. And if he can't get past Allen, then maybe his sort of future in the heavyweight division is going to be down a certain route as opposed to getting towards contender level. But Dave Allen in anyone's 4th fight, it's not necessarily just an easy job. And Dave Allen is actually training again now. Often he's lampooned for not putting in the effort, not putting in the work, the miles, just the diet, everything. But see here on screen, this is a post from 4 days ago. 17 stone, 11 pounds, another week gone, another week sticking completely to the food plan, no deviating whatsoever, and another week of long, steady running and good weights, feeling better every day. And then just a day ago, he said, if I box August 22nd. So clearly he's acknowledging that Eddie Hearn statement that he is potentially going to be added to that card. He says, and it's a big if, it will be the right opponent and the right deal. Not got many cracks left at the game, and I'm doing it properly now, and I won't be rushed into nothing that's not 100% right. I believe I'm going to go all the way this time, and that starts with the right fights at the right time. I like the sort of spirit that he's sort of showing there, but when he says he's going all the way, does he mean to heavyweight champion? Because if so, the delusion is still strong. But yeah, in terms of his preparation, his training, if he is truly sort of putting in the effort and the graft this time, that makes him a tougher opponent for anyone that he's going to be facing. We know he's durable, but he is limited. But he does have that sort of following on social media. Just on this, you can see above this post, 127,000 followers on Instagram. And most boxers, and we can't really sort of compare across sports, but in terms of boxing, where that rates, that's a mid-tier sort of guy with a bit of a profile. But really, Dave Allen's sort of in-ring performance doesn't really justify that sort of following. But he is a guy who's made a career effectively off banter and being an affable guy. But if Kuzmin has dipped out, it's a shame for Bakole, because it would have been a great fight, for a good win for him to take on to something bigger and better next time out. And if Dave Allen ends up replacing Bakole, I think the card loses a bit of quality. But if Dave Allen comes in to face Alen Babic, well, that's an interesting test, and we get to see a bit of what Babic is really about. But with all things, that would certainly come down to money, and Allen has signalled that there. It'll be the right deal. And remembering, he was meant to fight Hughie Fury, potentially on this card, but he turned down the offer. And after the point where Fury and his team had made some, this is the last minute you can sort of make a deal, he failed to do so, and ultimately he came back after the fact, but the fight was gone by then. So will we see the Dave Allen pay-per-view button pushed again? Possibly. And Martin Bakole, who will his opponent be? Yeah, it's unclear, but it's surprising that after those statements by Hearn, there hasn't been much more made of this. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.